Hello there, everyone. This is John Alba from WrestlingRumors.net, alongside my big guy on campus, Doug. And Doug, we got a very special guest on today, don't we?
Yes, we do. It's Mr. AJ Kirsch.
AJ.
And you might know him from the indie scene, and you might know him from Tough Enough Season 5. And
or technically just Tough Enough, just the relaunch.
Well,
I don't even know what they called it officially, but yeah, that was a trip.
yeah, well, that's him. That's AJ Kirsch talking to us right now. John, what you got for us,
That
buddy?
is, and now AJ recently advanced in the first round of the TNA Gut Check voting. They put it up to the fans to vote some indie guys in, some local favorites, and AJ, you and I have spoken many a times, and this is a big advancement for you. You want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, well, coming off of, as you mentioned, Tough Enough, which was, good Lord, 2 years ago already. Seems like a lifetime ago. Oh, yeah. But anyway, after Tough Enough, I was just trying to, make as many contacts in the business as I could, and I ended up doing a gut check seminar with D'Lo Brown in Sacramento in October of 2011. And I thought it was just going to be one of those, learning experiences where you get evaluated by somebody who's been there and done that, and you hopefully get some feedback that you can use to improve your career. And I got all that, but I thought it was a one-and-done type of thing. So I didn't really think much else of it. And then several months ago, I got an email from Impact Wrestling saying, we're going to relaunch the gut check competition, and anybody who's done a seminar is eligible to compete. Are you interested? And of course I said yes. And so the first time they did it, which was I think back in like January or February, something like that, they had unlimited voting, and God bless them, but that left the door wide open for some tomfoolery, some chicanery, and even some shenanigans.
Excellent vocabulary.
Oh, well, thank you. Words are fun. And so people who had zero social media following and I imagine zero notoriety on the indies were getting thousands and thousands of votes, which was quite impossible. So they suspended the competition. They were going to reevaluate the voting system, which they did, and relaunched Gut Check. This time you registered a vote, and it apparently worked because the voting was far more reasonable. But lucky for me, I won bracket 3 of TNA Gut Check, so I advanced in the competition beyond the first round. I have no idea what the second round entails, but so far so good.
Maybe it'll be like NXT, and I don't mean the current development system. I mean like the show where they put you through like singing competitions, which you would be okay in.
Oh, I'd kill it. I would kill it.
So I mean, maybe if you're lucky, that's what's next for you.
I honestly don't know what it is. It's fun to entertain possibilities. There's 16 brackets. I hope I got that right.
A lot of brackets.
It's a lot of brackets. So, if that is the case, then they're left with 16 finalists, which seems like it'd be the right amount of people for a reality show. Tough Enough was 14. Which would be great for me because having had the experience I had on Tough Enough, I would just jump at the opportunity to be on another reality show, probably any reality show, but let alone a wrestling-related reality show. Because I know Impact Wrestling had something similar over in the UK,
yes,
I
did.
believe.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if they launched a similar project here in the States. But that's just speculation, rumors, hearsay, conjecture, but it is Wrestling Rumors, so that's what we're here to discuss.
That is so right. What a plug, Doug. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, man.
I expect my free T-shirt within a week, please.
WrestlingRumors.net. Well, we don't have free T-shirts yet, but we need to make some T-shirts.
Oh, shame on you.
Yeah, but so with Gut Check, you're talking about reality TV, and you're talking about Tough Enough. You were on there. How was that? Like, how was that situation working with those guys, like DeMott and Austin? How was that?
Exhausting, intimidating, exhilarating. It was so much at once. I had no idea how to handle it. I had no idea how to prepare for something like that. There were moments I had to remind myself out loud that I wasn't dreaming. Like, just as a fan for so long, and as somebody who's trying to make their living in this business, just being under the daily tutelage of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Bill DeMott and Booker T and Trish Stratus. And, we never had any idea one day we might have Rey Mysterio visit us or John Cena. It was just an absolutely surreal experience that is, to this day, hard to put into words.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you mentioned you got a chance to kind of see the other side with TNA, and you got to meet with D'Lo Brown. I had a chance to interview D'Lo a couple months ago, and I thought D'Lo was a stand-up guy. You have anything to say about D'Lo?
Yeah, I got nothing but positive things to say about D'Lo. Like, I'm always skeptical about some of these seminars where, I wouldn't. There's a lot of guys out there who just want to beat you up and take your money. And I was a little bit skeptical that this was going to be that type of thing where they were just going to, drill us until we puked and, gave us a handshake and said, don't call us, we'll call you, that type of thing. And I'm really happy to say that could not be further from the truth. I learned a great deal from that day working with D'Lo. And D'Lo, he was cool enough to have a bit of a sense of humor about what we were doing. And I think that puts everybody involved at ease. You're not so much walking on eggshells. And I think that was my downfall on Tough Enough. I was so worried about messing up that I would inevitably mess up. So it was like, don't mess up, nail this. Like, you have to get this right. But if I tell you not to think about a pink elephant, you're going to think of a pink elephant. So it's like, don't mess up. You messed up.
Screw that back bump up. Don't screw that back bump up.
Yeah. So it was like, I had the most fun on Tough Enough. I had the most fun at the Gut Check seminar, and I have the most fun in pretty much whatever I'm doing if I remember that I'm doing it to have fun. Because at the end of the day, wrestling is fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, a lot of guys do it. Not everybody, but I think that's why a lot of guys do it, is because wrestling is fun. And as long as you step through the ropes, or I should say step through the curtain with that in mind, you're going to have a good time, and the fans are going to have a good time.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. Now, Doug and I were talking about this before we began the interview, and it's interesting to me because, AJ, you're pretty involved in the indie scene, and I know that you're a guy who you're not afraid to get up to that turnbuckle, lay down, elbow drop. You pride yourself in your athleticism, as you should. But
Correct.
One of the things that you and I talked about, AJ, a long time back was your love for ECW, your love for hardcore wrestling. And right now, we're seeing a guy in WWE succeed who pretty much got his backbone off the hardcore wrestling scene in Dean Ambrose. And do you think that there's a correlation between hardcore wrestling and today's product? Do you think that without A, there's no B, or vice versa?
That's a difficult question to answer, so I'm going to do the best I can. I think without hardcore wrestling, and by that I mean the ECW style in all its forms, because as ECW became more popular, you started seeing glimpses of the ECW quote-unquote hardcore wrestling style in WWF at the time and in WCW. Yep. And I think when those two giants realized that this little guy down here in Philadelphia is making all this noise and that there's money to be made, they started copying those little things that ECW was doing that made it stand out from the rest. So I don't think wrestling would be where it is today without ECW forcing the business to evolve the way it did. Unfortunately, I think everything that goes along with hardcore wrestling, and by that I mean not just, the pans and the broomsticks and the oars and the vacuums and fire extinguishers and all that crazy stuff, but I mean matches the likes of Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, or, and even something a little bit more high-flying like a Jerry Lynn and RVD. We don't really see matches like that on WWE TV anymore, and I think it's a shame because it's a genre of wrestling that is exciting in a way that today's general product isn't.
Now, who excited you the most back then? Like when you were watching ECW, I was a huge ECW mark, back in the 90s. I tape traded. I was a huge fan of the Lucha Libre style. And so, RVD was my boy. and I've actually got to hang out with him a couple times. And he's such a down guy, and he takes so much pride in his craft as far as what he can do. So, like when you were watching ECW back then, and taking that into effect, who were you really like down with? Who were you a really big fan of in that year? Those like 4 or 5
a couple years, yeah.
Yeah.
RVD is definitely at the top of the list. I mean, just watching the guy move, he moved differently than everybody else in everything he did.
Fluid.
Like fluid is a perfect way to describe him. He was fluid, he was graceful, but it was in a way that you could believe he could still kick some serious ass.
Exactly.
So as far as an athleticism standpoint and just watching somebody work, it was RVD. But, man, toward the end of ECW, I was a huge Rhino fan. I mean, Rhino was just so destructive in everything he did. Just built like a tank, and credit to all of his opponents because they made the gore look like the most brutal thing in the world. Like, I don't know. There was something about the way he delivered it and the way that his opponents made it look that just made me a huge mark for Rhino and the gore. And I don't know. It was just that to me was an extremely you could put Rhino's face to ECW. I think, especially in the last year or two.
Yeah, definitely. When they had the TV show on TNN, that was Rhino was champion. He was getting his big push.
Right.
I think he probably had the best spear in the industry at that point.
And then that was it. And then they were pretty much forced to close down from there. Just as Rhino was hitting his peak, just as RVD was hitting his peak, WWE.com did a great article recently that kind of talked about what would have happened with ECW had they been extended. And it talked about how, Rob Van Dam was going to be the next big thing, believe it or not. And it really is an interesting thing to think about. And I ask you this hardcore wrestling thing because, now we're at a time where it seems like people are pretty pissed off with the wrestling business.
Oh, I'd agree with that.
And I think that quality has been traded in for stereotyping. And when I say stereotyping, I mean the build. The one guy has the build. And it's refreshing that, we see a guy like Curtis Axel getting this quasi-push so far. And we see guys in TNA, even this new X Division concept that they're coming up with, trying to set forth this new precedent. AJ, my question to you is, if you could change one thing about the wrestling business today, specifically or non-specifically, your call, what would it be?
Well, before I get to that, I would like to actually hit on something you mentioned about 30 seconds ago. Refreshing? Really? Curtis Axel? I mean...
look, here's the thing. I view myself as an optimist.
All right, but, I mean... it was barely several months ago where he was Michael McGillicuddy, but they're still pushing the fact that he's got this family lineage. And would Paul Heyman, you line up everybody on the current roster and in development right now? Do you think Paul Heyman points at Joe Hennig, I think is his real name?
Look, here's how I can put it.
My guy.
Here's how I can put it. Here's how I can put it. They could have made it Otunga, okay? So I'll take that and say, okay, I'll take this guy instead.
Oh, Alba the optimist. I love it.
God bless your optimism, man. But, man, when
I
don't know. When I see something like that happen, I mean, he was pushed for so long as Michael McGillicuddy, which is a ridiculous name to begin with. Can you really put McGillicuddy on a T-shirt? How do you chant McGillicuddy?
It's very true.
You don't.
It's possible.
But really, I mean, all I'm saying is I would be very surprised, and stranger things have happened, but I would be very surprised if Paul Heyman said, that's my next guy. After guys like CM Punk and Brock Lesnar and everybody who he made a star in ECW, you could call a Paul Heyman guy. Steve Austin is a Paul Heyman guy. Mick Foley is a Paul Heyman guy. Hennig has a long future ahead of him in this business, and like I said,
He's 33.
He's got some time.
Okay, yeah. Well, he's still got some time. But
he was 35 when he started.
Right, and DDP was not 6'8" and 320 pounds of raw muscle. So again, stranger things have happened. But I would just be really shocked if Paul Heyman said, "Yeah, that's my next guy."
So is that what you would change?
Well, that's just I think that's a smaller point. I think that's just a little example of something bigger that wrestling has either been lacking or that wrestling needs. And it might just be because we're jaded fans. We've been fans for how long? The way I look at it is, and every time I complain about the state of wrestling nowadays, I try to keep this in mind. When we were kids, it was Disney movies, right? It was Lion King, it was Aladdin, it was Pinocchio, whatever. Now that we're adults, we have the luxury of seeing Fight Club or The Shining or
American History X.
American History X, right. For us wrestling fans, all that's left is Disney. And so
it's true.
For us to really I try to keep this in mind because every time I feel like there's something wrong about wrestling, it's like, well, look who it's geared to. We could be having the same discussion about a movie, but we could be ripping The Emperor's New Groove a new butthole. But it's not for us. Emperor's New Groove, I enjoyed it. I thought it was hilarious, to be honest. But like, Disney movies are not for the 20 and 30-somethings who were watching them 15, 20 years ago anymore. No, you can still enjoy them. Every now and then you'll get this, WALL-E is amazing. If you haven't seen it, go watch WALL-E.
It's fantastic.
I hope one day I love my children. I don't have any kids now, but when I do, I hope I love my children as much as I love WALL-E. I will take a bullet for that little robot. He is everything that humanity should strive to be.
Wow.
But I digress.
I would more pander towards like Robin Hood or Peter Pan. But I hear you.
Perfect examples, and movies that to this day are still really enjoyable, but that's because we get that feeling we did when we were watching them for the first time.
Right.
Which is why the most raved about matches for fans like us are your Triple H versus Undertaker where Shawn Michaels is the referee. Yep. It's because it gives us that feeling we had when we were fans.
Nostalgia.
10, 15 years ago. Exactly. Nostalgia. So when we look at Curtis Axel and how he's the Paul Heyman guy, it's like the WWE is trying to use this reputation that Paul Heyman has spent his entire life building and said, here's the next guy. Here's that next guy. And as longtime fans, I mean, again, I don't mean to poo-poo on your opinion, but as longtime fans, I look at something like that and I'm like, ugh, really?
Here's a good question, Kirsch.
That's like a big... I'm sorry. I don't even know if I answered your question. That was just a big rant.
Fine. Don't worry about it. I'm glad you did.
All right. I still need to change. There's still a lot I would change. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head. What would I change? I'll come up with a more succinct answer, soundbite. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Like who would you book in that position other than Curtis Angle at that point? If you were going to be the WWE officials and say, all right, we're going to give Paul Heyman another client to boost somebody up, who would you put in that situation?
Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley, in a heartbeat.
Because even with how strong he's being booked right now?
All right. Strong, he's a singles champion, he's the U.S. champion, okay. Fine, well, and dandy. Have we seen him just a shred of what he's capable of when he was in NXT?
That's true.
Yeah.
Scary promos. And just deliberate work in the ring. Not one little shred of wasted movement. Everything he does means something, or everything he does makes you further believe he's this character. And I, honest to God, believe that Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, has the potential to be the next Steve Austin. He's got the chance. He's so good at being this twisted, dark, enigmatic character that I believe he can captivate people who aren't already watching wrestling, which is what Stone Cold Steve Austin did. Stone Cold was the guy where it was like, you got on your phone and you were like, dude, come over to my house on Monday. Aren't you watching wrestling? Yeah, but there's this guy. He's Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's flipping the bird. He's drinking beers. He's driving beer trucks down to the ring. Dude, I got to check that out. That actually sounds pretty cool. And then they're hooked.
It's true.
Right, straight, right. He's breaking and entering. He's drinking on the job. But I really believe Moxley can be that guy if they give him the platform to be that guy. And it may not happen immediately. It took Steve 2 years in the WWE to become a main eventer.
It's true.
But he had his moment. He had his Austin 316 moment where it was like, this guy's going to be somebody. I don't think Dean Ambrose has had that moment yet, but I think Paul Heyman can make that moment happen for him.
Very interesting. John Alba, Doug McDonald here from WrestlingRumors.net, chatting with AJ Kirsch of TNA Gut Check along with WWE. Tough Enough. We got a couple more questions for you, AJ. Apologies for taking up your time.
No. Let's. I love talking wrestling. There are very few things I can talk forever about. One of them's Nickelback.
Well,
and nobody
that's true. That's
the
true.
Other one is wrestling.
Well, I was about to transition a little. We'll go back to wrestling to finish, but I was about to transition to music quickly here because Doug and I are both big music guys. You and I have a lot in common as well with music, and one of the things I saw you posted about the other day was Airborne and their new album Black Dog Barking.
Yeah.
I saw Airborne a couple of weeks ago. Joel O'Keefe tossed me his guitar pick, played a solo right in front of me. Fantastic. What are your thoughts on the album?
Awesome.
What are your thoughts on the album?
Big fan of the album. I love it. I've had Back in the Game on loop for ever since it came out on Tuesday, and it's now at the time of this recording, it's Friday. So I've had this thing on loop pretty much the entire time I'm in the gym or just need a little sneer on my face or something. And speaking of lost, things that could use a little pick me up or something, I feel like there isn't a lot of just pure sweat-soaked rock and roll.
And
for anybody who's an AC/DC fan or a Guns N' Roses fan or any of that genre of hard rock, check out Airborne because they're I don't want to say they're a carbon copy of AC/DC, but they pretty much, it's their sound minus 30 years.
They are the modern day AC/DC.
They are.
And they bring a sense of intensity, too, that a lot of bands...
Yeah, it's like they're rocking with purpose. It's not just swinging their dick out there for anybody listening.
True.
It's we're here to rock, and we're going to melt your face.
Well, for the record, I do that anyway when I perform, so it's okay. But I just got back from a gig a few hours ago, and I was doing that anyway. So,
okay, so you used your one phone call, basically, to do the interview, right?
Correct.
You are calling from a police station. I admire your determination, sir. Your dedication.
Yeah, it was a rough day, but you know what?
They're giving us a lot of time.
Yeah, they're opening up that jail cell for me. But anyway, so far in this interview, we've learned that AJ Kirsch has no idea what's going on with TNA Gut Check and that he's a big Pixar guy. So what else is AJ Kirsch up to these days?
Well, I guess the highlight is I recently won the Pick Me Larry contest, which means I will be a future guest on Larry King's show.
All right.
Sweet.
So that'll probably, I think it's safe to say, the biggest platform I've been on. Just to be, I don't know. It's just kind of surreal to me to be thinking that Larry King's going to be interviewing me. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I have no idea when that's...
ask him how long...
What's that?
Are you going to ask him how long he thinks that he has left on this earth?
No, God, I am going to question his faith to the Dodgers, though. He's a Dodger fan.
Ooh.
And you're a Giants guy, correct?
I'm a San Francisco Giants guy, and it's a good time to be a Giants fan and a really bad time to be a Dodger fan. My team's won 2 championships in the last 3 years. His team's bankrupt. I'm just saying.
It's true, and Magic Johnson has found his way.
Oh, yes.
And that's
what a cluster going on in LA baseball.
Little tricky. Doug, you got any final thoughts you want to share with AJ?
Well, Kirsch, what do you have going on in the indie scene? Do you have any bookings coming up, or people can go see you?
I do, actually. On Saturday, June 8th, in Atascadero, California, I will be in the main event for Vendetta Pro Wrestling, actually facing off against my fellow Tough Enough competitors, Eric Watts and Martin Casaus.
Now, what is the deal with Martin? Because I know Martin. I know you've faced Eric a ton of times.
Yes, I've won every time.
Oh no, that's good.
I've won every time. I just want to say that one more time to make sure that everybody heard it, especially Eric. I've won every time.
Now, what's the deal with Martin these days?
As far as I know, Martin is still at it as hard as ever.
Hell of a talent. Hell of a talent.
Great talent. I'm really excited to actually get in the ring with him too. But to the best of my knowledge, he has not had any further contact with WWE, which, if that is indeed the case, would shock me, considering he was pretty much on pace to win the competition had he not gotten hurt.
Right.
So I'd be shocked if he didn't have a future with WWE. But as far as I know, he hasn't had any contact. But yeah, I mean, he's wrestling out of Utah still at Ultra Championship Wrestling out of Salt Lake City, and yeah, I think he's just hustling away.
Yeah, well, good for him. And
meanwhile, I'm beating Eric Watts.
That's right, and you are beating him into the ground hard, so that's all that matters.
That's it. That's all that matters.
Now, last thing here, I just want to say, did I read something about an ego reunion by any chance?
Yeah, actually, my old tag team, I partnered with Nate Rules for the better part of 3 years when I was first cutting my teeth in the business on the West Coast in All Pro Wrestling out of Hayward. And he and I actually did really well. We have a victory over the New Age Outlaws. We have a victory over America's Most Wanted when they were TNA Tag Team Champions. So we had a good run. Unfortunately, he got in my ear a little bit and wanted to relaunch the tag team, and I reluctantly accepted, but it didn't exactly go the way that he said it would. So, yes, there was an ego reunion, but unfortunately, he and I are actually on track to square off against each other on Saturday, June 1st at All Pro Wrestling Gym Wars in Hayward, California. So,
see, that was a fantastic plug. Fantastic.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's all about promotion.
Shameless promotion it is.
Shameless.
And let's finish that shameless promotion right now. AJ Kirsch, follow him on Twitter at AJ Kirsch, on YouTube if I got this right. I am AJ Kirsch.
Correct. Somebody took AJ Kirsch, and I'd like to know who it is so I can tear them a new poop shoot.
That's right. You could also find him on Facebook at AJ Kirsch. Just type that in the search bar. And again, you can find WrestlingRumors.net on Twitter at WrestleRumors. Find myself, John Alba SFC, and Doug McDonald, if I'm not mistaken, at Doug O'Mac. So all those plugs.
One more.
Taken. Go ahead.
I got one more.
Your tout is fantastic.
I love tout. I got on it because WWE was doing it, and so of course that means I have to too.
And they gave up.
And they kind of it pops up from time to time, but it's awesome. It's so much fun. It's like it's 15 seconds of video instead of 140 characters or less, and there's so much you can do with 15 seconds of video. So follow me on tout at AJ Kirsch. I'm actually verified. I've got that little blue check mark on tout.
Very nice.
So I wish Twitter would verify me, but I don't know what else I have to do. I guess I need. I don't know.
You gotta follow Wrestling Rumors, John Alba, and Doug O'Mac. That's what you have to do to get verified. But regardless, again, if you're just looking for some great wrestling, check out AJ Kirsch. And if you want to catch a Pixar movie with him, I'm sure he pays on the first date. So I hear. But AJ, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure, and I know we'll be talking to you again.
Guys. I always have a blast. Anytime. Thank you for being accommodating. I know it's late on the East Coast, so I appreciate you working with me, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you guys. So anytime, I'm always down.
Awesome. Thanks again, AJ.
Thank you, guys.